Part 25 of ASP.NET MVC tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss selecting, inserting, updating, and deleting data in MVC using Entity Framework. Please watch Part 24 before proceeding with this video. We'll be using these two tables, TBL Department and TBL Employee, for this demo. The SQL script to create these two tables is already implemented. I will have the script available on my blog just in case if you need it. Let's select the script and execute it. At this point, we should have the required tables created, so there they are. Now, we want to implement an index view. As you can see here, it's going to list all the employees here, and then we need a link here to create a new employee, and then I should be able to edit the existing employee details as well, view their full details, and delete the employee as well. And I want to achieve this using Entity Framework. Let's flip to Visual Studio. Now the first thing to do is to add ADO.NET Entity Data Model, and to do that I'm going to right click on this models folder, add a new item, and make sure you have this data selected under installed templates, and I'm going to add ADO.NET Entity Data Model. I'm going to name this Employee Data Model. Click Add. Now we want to generate our model from the database, because we have the tables already existing in the database. Using these existing tables, we want to generate our models. We want to generate an employee model and a department model using these two tables. So I'm going to select Generate from Database option. Click Next. Now click on this new connection, and then here you can specify the name of the server. In my case, SQL Server is installed on my local machine, so I'm going to specify local. Just in case if you have your SQL Server installed on a different machine, and if that's present in a network, then you can either specify the name of that computer or its IP address here. Now instead of saying local, you can also use dot. And I'm going to use Windows Authentication, and then select the database. Now our tables are present in sample database, so I'm going to select sample as the database. We can test our connection. So test connection succeeded. Click OK. Now click OK. And then here you can specify the name for your connection string. So this is the name that will be used to store this connection string in web.config file. I'm going to call my connection string as employee context. Click Next. Now here this wizard is going to connect to SQL Server and list all the tables, views, and stored procedures that are present in the sample database. Now you can select your tables from by expanding this tables option here. I'm going to select TBL Department and TBL Employee tables, and then you can also specify the namespace for your models. Now I want my models to be residing in a namespace called models. Okay, so I'm going to name that, and then click Finish. So at this point, this wizard should automatically generate two entities for us, TBL Employee and TBL Department, and these entities are generated using these two tables. Now the table names are the name of the entities, and the columns within the table are the properties within that entity. Okay, and then here look at this. We don't want entities to be like TBL Employee or TBL Department. Instead we want them as Employee and Department. Okay, so I'm going to rename them. So I'm going to call this Employee, and then look at this. Every employee has a department associated with them. Okay, so if you want that specific department details, then we can do so by using department property. So that's implemented as a navigation property because that is present in a different table. And then look at this, that is again named as TBL Department, but we want that property as department name, as department. And then again along the same lines, I'm going to change the entity name from TBL Department to Department, and every department can have multiple employees, and to retrieve the employees belonging to a specific department, we again have this navigation property TBL Employees. Again, instead of TBL Employees, I'm going to call this Employees. Let's rename that. Alright, now let's change all the save all the changes, and let's build our solution. The next step is to actually add the controller. So I'm going to right click on my controllers folder, add a new controller, and I'm going to call this employee controller. And then from the scaffolding options, I'm going to choose my template as MVC controller with read/write actions and views using entity framework. That's going to be my scaffolding template, and my model class is going to be employee, and my data context class is going to be employee context. You remember the name of the connection string, we named it employee context. So I'm going to select my context class as employee context. This class is auto generated for us, and this is residing in MVC demo.models namespace. Okay, and then my view engine is going to be Razor. Click add. So this should add employee controller.cs, and along with that it should also automatically generate the views to list employee, that is the index view, create view, delete details, and edit views as well. Look at that, these views are automatically added to employees folder, and this folder is present in the views folder, and we also have the employee controller there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run this application. So I have pressed Control F5 to run the application. So look at this. It's look at the URL, localhost MVC demo. Now it says the resource cannot be found. Why is that? Because by default, when I run this application, if you look at the root config file, if here we are not specifying the controller and action name. So if we don't specify the controller and action name, it's going to navigate to home controller index action. But if we have the home controller, no we don't. That's why we get this error, the resource cannot be found. Now we don't want the application to be navigating to home controller and index action. Instead, we want that to navigate to employee controller and index action. So I'm going to change my default controller employee. Now if I go ahead and run this, as you might expect, it's going to navigate to employee controller and index action. And then within the index action, what's going to do, it's going to retrieve all the employees and list them for me there. Okay, now there's one more change that we have to do. By default, the views that are generated here, if you look at the edit view, for example, at the bottom there is a section called scripts section. Now I'm going to get rid of the scripts section. We'll discuss more about them in a later video session. Again, in the create view also we have the script section, so let's get rid of that as well. Whereas delete details and index views doesn't have that section. Alright, so with these changes, let me go ahead and rerun this. And now look at this, I have the index view which is listing all the employees. I can create a new employee if I want by clicking on this one. Look at that, I am on the create view. I can add a new employee, for example, test, gender test, city test, and department maybe IT. Click create. So it has added that new employee. I can edit the employee details, change the department to HR, gender to maybe test 1 to 3. Save that. Look at that, the changes are persisted to the database. I can view their full details by clicking on the details link. Back to list. I can even delete an employee. Look at this. In the previous sessions we discussed, deleting an employee using GET request is bad. Okay, that's why when I click on this delete link, it will actually redirect me to another page which is going to show the full details of the employee, and then it's asking me the question, are you sure you want to delete this? And if that's the case, when I click this delete button, the form will be posted to the server, and as part of that post process, the employee details will be deleted. Look at that, I click delete and the employee details are deleted. Okay, so that's good. All this is auto-generated for us. And if you look at the employee controller here, it has got quite a bit of code. Okay, so here we have employee context class. And then look at this index. In the index action we are creating, we are using that employee context object, and using employees properties, we are able to retrieve all the employees. Now I'm going to discuss about all the code that is auto-generated in a later video session. Okay, but then if you look at this view, these views that are auto-generated for us, there are a few problems here. The first problem, if you look at this, the formatting, I don't really like this. I want to format this properly. And again, if you look at the department name, it just says name. I want that to be as department name, for example. Okay, and again, if I click on this create new, look at this, without filling any of these details, if I click create, I'm able to create that employee. Again, if I edit any of the existing employee, look at that, I want this gender to be implemented as a drop down list, but I have a text box there. And then maybe I want here a default text saying default options, select a department. So we'll see how to implement all this in our upcoming videos. Again, if I click on delete, you can see the delete details here. And when I click this delete button, if you really want a confirmation dialog box, we can do that as well. In fact, we have discussed how to do that in the previous sessions. But however, we'll talk about the code that is auto-generated and to solve these little UI issues in our upcoming videos. On this slide, you can find resources for ASP.NET, C#, and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.